Hello, Tubby and Coos fans. It's me, Candace, coming at you tonight from my house to talk about this wonderful book, Bone Shard Emperor, which is the second book in the Drowning Empire series. And I know a lot of y'all read The Bone Shard Daughter, which was the first one. And I'm really excited for this event tonight because we have Andrea Stewart, the author of these books, who is the daughter of immigrants, was raised in a number of places across the US. Her parents always emphasized science and education, and so she spent her childhood immersed in Star Trek and odd-smelling library books, which I very much identify with. When her admittedly ambitious dreams of becoming a dragon slayer didn't pan out, also identify with that, she instead turned to writing books. She now lives in sunny California, and in addition to writing, she can be found herding cats, looking at birds, and falling down research rabbit holes. And you know, when my dreams of becoming a dragon slayer didn't pan out, I turned to selling books. So I really have a lot in common here with Andrea. We also have the audiobook Narrators for the Drowning Empire. And so with us, we'll have Fyodor Chin, who is an LA-based actor, writer, comedian, and producer. As an actor, he was classically trained at UCLA, the American Conservatory Theater, and has studied with renowned acting coach Larry Moss. He was a performer on the Upright Citizen Brigade Theater's Maud Night. TV credits include Big Little Lies, Good Trouble, Jane the Virgin, The Affair, and Cartoon Network's Regular Show. He has won multiple earphone awards and the Sovis Award for his audiobook narration. He is also the voice of Zenyatta and Lee Sin in the hit video games Overwatch and League of Legends. So I know all of my nerd folk out there are super excited to have him here at this event, as am I. And we also have Natalie Nadas, who is an award-winning audiobook narrator of over 300 titles, so many audiobooks, known for her passionate storytelling and silly antics on TikTok and Instagram. A bunch of you I know must follow her. She started her career as an opera singer and has a master's of music from the University of North Texas. She records from a mountaintop in Virginia where she lives with her husband and 2 daughters. And finally, we have Emily Wu Zeller, who has worked for over 3 decades as a voiceover artist, dancer, singer, actor, and producer, named a Golden Voice and a Best Voice of 2019, 2018, 2015, and 2013 by Audiophile magazine. She has garnered many awards in her voiceover career, including an Audie, Best Female Narrator from the Independent Audiobook Awards, multiple Sovis Awards, and 24 Earphones Awards. In addition to a wide range of narration and over 500 audiobook titles, Emily has works in video games as well, and most recent notable games including Cyberpunk 2077 as Panem, I think, and The Last of Us Part 2. She's also dubbed for dozens of anime series. In audio drama, she recently performed as Dr. Aphra in Star Wars and the narrator in Passable in Pink. So all of these people are so amazing, and I am so excited to have them. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Y'all are all really fantastic, and I'm so excited to have you all here. So one, I also want to let folks who are watching know if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat for Q&A, and we will try to incorporate those sort of as we go along. But first, Andrea, tell us more about the Drowning Empire for those who have not read any of the books. And then for those who have read the first book, give us a little bit about the new book.
Yeah, sure. So the Drowning Empire series is an epic fantasy series that's set on an archipelago of migratory islands. And it has a system of bone shard magic that is inspired by computer programming, just what I tell people when I kind of pitch it to them. So it's set in an Asian-inspired setting, and it follows several characters, hence all the narrators. There's a daughter who's trying to reclaim her rightful place as heir. There's a smuggler who professes not to care but can't seem to stop doing good things. there's two women in an established relationship who are struggling with the class differences between them. And there's a stranger on a remote island who's trying to unravel the mystery of why she's there. So that kind of covers what's going on in the first book. I don't want to give too many spoilers for book two, but book two kind of interweaves those stories a little bit more, because I think in the first book, you're trying to see a little bit about how these characters relate to one another. And in book two, they're interacting a lot more. We kind of get a bigger view of the Empire, and also get to see a lot more conflict, both physical, emotional, mental. So, but I don't want to tell people exactly where book one ends. So
that's fair. And so, audiobook narrators, tell us who you read, who your character is in the Drowned Empire, and whether or not you relate to them, and how you sort of got involved in the project. So whoever wants to go first. Theodore, go ahead.
Okay, ladies first, but no. I read the Jovis chapters. Jovis is that kind of the roguish, reluctant hero that Andrea was describing. I guess in my mind, I was thinking the Han Solo kind of type. He doesn't quite want to do the right thing, but he always kind of does. But I think more importantly, I get to voice his little animal companion, Mephi, who, from what I understand, is kind of a people seem to enjoy. That he's such a lovable little scamp. In my mind, I think he's like kind of an otter-like creature, I guess. But actually, if I may, my wife and I have a dog. This guy here. Yes,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's Mephi. His voice is actually based on. I'm sure a lot of you pet owners probably, your pets talk to you, and that. And so Mephi's voice was kind of based on Desmond's voice, and that's how we came up with that, because he was such an adorable little guy. Yeah, as far as getting involved with the project, I think I was probably just asked to audition, and was fortunate enough to get to go on this journey with all these guys.
Do you want to go, Emily?
Oh, okay. Can we hear me? I feel
yeah,
like I muted myself. Okay. Yeah. I play Ranami Falu, and I don't want to give away too much because there is more in the second book from the first book, so I fill in. I've got everybody else. Natalie's got another. She'll tell you what she's doing, but I've got the other folks. Which is really cool. It's really fun to be able to do both Ranami and Falu. Those are the two who are in a relationship with each other. So getting to do chapters, from their two different perspectives is awesome. And then also in this complete, at first seemingly out of left field, right? This other world that's happening that slowly gets folded in a little bit more in the second book. And yeah. And likewise, I also, was asked to audition, and that's how it happened.
Yeah, I'm the role of Lynn, who is the bone shard daughter. And same thing, just was sent the project and was so excited about it. I'm excited to see how the series has picked up, and fans are excited about it. And I can't wait to find out where it goes. I feel like every book, there's been like mind-blowing revelations. And I just know Andrea is saving stuff for book 3 that we're going to be like, what? Like it was set up from the beginning. So I can't wait to find out what happens.
And that was actually going to be my next question is like, do you, I assume you enjoy reading this or you wouldn't be doing it. And are you excited about the third book and like what's going to happen? And, y'all get to clearly see that and read it before anyone else will. So that's kind of cool.
It's a
Yeah, well,
huge
I
perk of
don't-
the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll be a spoiler to say that this new book ends with a pretty big cliffhanger, at least certainly for some characters involved, that I personally was very invested in wanting to know what happens next. So yeah, I cannot wait.
Yeah, I
Book
can't
three
wait
is
to
it's the Bone
finish it
Shard
either.
War, right, Andrea? Is the title the Bone Shard War? Do we have a title?
The Bone Shard War, yes. That is the third book title.
There's like hanging threads that I know you're going to tie up, and we're all going to be like, what? Can't
I
wait.
hope so.
There's been at least one moment like that in each book, so I can't wait.
So I'm curious as to how y'all decide on like the specific voice and tone to do for each character. I know Fyodor talked about the animal character being your dog. So I'm
That's
just
the most
curious.
important thing, really, to really nail that voice. I think.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, how y'all decide. All of y'all do so many voices and so many different things. And so I'm curious about that process and sort of how you decide how the characters sound.
I'll go first. Coordinating a multicast like this is a lot of emails, like a lot of emails. So we usually try to figure out who is voicing the majority of certain characters and let that actor establish those voices. And then we get voice reference files and we compare notes. I don't think we do really any accents in this one, but a lot of fantasy when it's a multicast. Oh my God, it's so complicated with all the accents. And swapping samples and discussions and deciding what kinds of dialects and which vowel and consonant changes there are going to be, things like that. All of the prompts for how the characters themselves sound, we take from the writing. If it's good writing, it's there for us, or we have a sense of who this character is and how they function and what kind of person they are. But as far as coordinating, it's just a heck of a lot of emails and voice memos, and it's great to have good collaborative partners like Fyodor and Emily, who are just so great to work with and collaborate with.
Anyone else have anything to add? That was actually a really good answer. It's
we could do a workshop for hours talking about how you can, how do you bring a character to life? Because that's really what the question is, right? It's more of an acting question and less of a technical question. So that's really it. And like Natalie was saying, it's written. The bones of it are in the text. Pun not intended, but happened. It's there, right? So you have a very good sense of who these characters are, and then you lift it off the page and make them real, and then you coordinate with the other people who are also doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was going to be another question about the coordination, but Natalie kind of answered that. Like when you have multiple readers, like, I would just assume it would be a lot of emails or whatever, just coordinating all of the different things. And I guess then the follow-up question would be, what do you coordinate when you're reading a book? Do you have to coordinate like the way things are pronounced or how things sound, or like what are the things that you all have to sort of get together and know?
That's exactly right. It's the pronunciations of things, and then also, where we're going with characters that overlap, or even, especially when you know that you're getting involved in a series, characters that don't yet overlap, you still ideally are keeping track of who all the characters are, because they may show up in somebody else's chapter in book 3, right? Or 6. Depending on the series. Okay. Yeah. And then I think the other part of it is actually in casting. I think, there's, in terms of general style and tone, those happen in the audition, right? So they have a sense of what people, in relation to each other, what the actors are going to sound like for the whole book. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that actually I got to participate in, which was pretty exciting for me. After they bought the book and we talked about they're going to do an audiobook, they sent me some auditions and they were like, what do you like better? So, which was amazing because I love listening to audiobooks, and I can be a little bit particular in the sense that if there is a narrator that just kind of hits me the wrong way, then it kind of like, I just like fixate on their tone and like the way that they're reading it, and I can't like focus on the book at all anymore. So yeah, that was pretty fun.
Wait,
and it was
here's the question: were you able to get all your first choices?
Oh yeah, no. You guys were my first choices, for sure.
Theo, oh my God, you asked the bomb question.
Yeah, and then the next thing is they sent me a pronunciation guide, which is like an Excel spreadsheet with all the words that I've made up and names, and they're like, hey, how do you pronounce these? And I start sweating because I'm like, how do you pronounce them? So I have to go through that and then do an audio file where I read the words and try to figure out exactly what I did to myself there.
And you wrote a lot of like phrases in other languages, like the Bone Shard language. So
yeah,
that's on you.
That is, it's funny because I don't, I am an introvert and I do a lot of reading. I don't do a lot of talking. So when I sit down and I write these things, I'm thinking about the rhythm of it in my head and not how it sounds when it's read out loud. So it's always like a little bit startling to be asked to actually pronounce these things. And right now in a pandemic, it's not like I've been doing a lot of reading. So
yeah, I feel the same way about audiobook narrators. I feel if one hits me wrong, I can't, it's like I won't even know what's going on in the story because I'm the same way. I will like fixate on it. And the opposite of that is also true for me. If an audiobook narrator is like amazing, I get so engrossed in it and I can listen to like 4 hours at a time and I'm like, what have I been doing all day? So I think that sort of goes both ways with that. And so both for Andrea and for the audiobook narrators, but I guess in different sort of contexts, what was your sort of favorite scene to write, Andrea, and what were y'all's favorite scenes to narrate? And then sort of along with that, were there any scenes that were super difficult to write or super difficult to narrate?
I'll just go ahead and start with that one. For favorite scenes to write, it's always the ending scenes for me because I'm like on that down slope. And then also like there's all of the kind of emotional catharsis. And then also like I like to write a little bit of the aftermath as the characters are kind of trying to deal with their emotions of what just happened. So that's basically almost always my favorite part.
And what about y'all? Did y'all have any favorite scenes to narrate?
Well, so question because I don't want to give anything away.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, we are talking about the second book.
The second book.
We don't. I mean, that's the one that just came out, right? So,
yeah.
So I don't. People who are watching this may or may not have read the first one. So minor spoilers are to be expected because we're talking about the second book, but maybe nothing like super major. But like okay. Small spoilers are fine.
I'll give a vague indication then.
Sure.
It has to do with the people on the island. That was really fun. It was really unexpected and a really fun character arc to ride. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
So if you read the first book, then you know.
You know that there are island
You
people.
know that there are
you
island
don't know
people.
what's happening with the island
That's true.
people.
So this is a scene in the second book with the island people that you're talking
Yes.
about. Oh,
Yes.
see, I like this now. Okay.
I always love it when Lynn is actually doing the bone shard magic, which she's not doing as much in the second book, which is a good thing, I guess. But it's just so interesting when she like takes the little shard out and she like reads what's there and she's like, how can I change this to make it do what I want without making the whole thing fall apart? I like that. I also like her and Jovis like bantering. It's just classic not enemies to lovers, but just kind of at each other. It's good banter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a bit of that. Yeah.
And there's really cool flashbacks too. There's a lot of flashbacks, and it's interesting to like inhabit someone else, but I have to stay as Lynn and think about how much of that other character I want to tip vocally. So that's interesting.
I think, well, in addition to the aforementioned Mephi stuff, this is always just fun. I in general, I like narrating like any of the action scenes, like fight scenes. It's because you can get like, for me, like you just start to see it, and you can get like a real good kind of run going, like kind of build up to the action. And that's always satisfying.
Cool. And do y'all listen to each other's parts in the books and try to, so like sometimes characters talk to each other and whatever. So I'm just wondering, if you listen to each other's parts and try to like, I don't know, match tones or anything like that. Or if you just do your own thing and don't listen to. I mean, clearly y'all collaborate, but I'm just wondering if you actually like listen to the other people's parts, like as you're going along or not.
Well, the characters that I'm doing, they don't actually overlap yet quite as much. So I haven't had as much of a need for that. But also, there is a lot that has to be left to the imagination because we're all voicing not just our primary characters, but the other characters who show up within a scene. And there's a real beauty in that, I think, with audiobooks in particular, because it's written as a book. It's not written as a screenplay. It's not written as a radio play where you do want a giant cast and lots of sound effects and possibly even visuals and all these things that in an audiobook you have space for all of the readers, listeners to fill in with their imagination. So yes, in terms of characteristics maybe I'm using the wrong word, qualities of the characters themselves, we do want to make sure those are in line. And we don't want to make any like crazy choices like, okay, this one character is going to be 3 octaves down and like, oh no, I made him a tenor. Like we don't want to do that kind of, difference, but it doesn't need to be like an exact tone pitch match kind of deal. Yeah, because it's all within the context of the characters who are speaking anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So the way that I see Theo is going to sound different to the way Andrea hears Theo, and that's part of what's fun about it too. Yeah,
that's definitely part of the beauty of it, because like Theo or Jovis is gonna be filtered through Lynn's perspective differently than he's going to appear in other people's. Yeah, I definitely do listen several times to all the samples that I get, and as they reoccur I'll go back and listen, not to mimic it, not to do an impression in any way, but just to understand some of the colors, some of the shapes, some of the pacing, and to try to hint at it so it's a more cohesive listening experience. But absolutely, and I think about this like when I record different genres, like a guy in a romance is going to sound sexier to the person who's interested in him than to other people around him. So everything gets filtered.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because everything is filtered, right? In real life, like through
everything's a construct.
like that. Yeah, exactly. So I love that a lot because I think it makes a lot of sense. And Andrea, how do you feel when you listen to the audiobook of your own books and you get to hear all the characters come to life? Does it change like the way that you write? Like, do you see your characters better? Like, I'm just curious as to how it affects you and your writing.
It's definitely a different experience. So, you know, by the time I'm finished writing it and I've gone through edits and copy edits and proofreading, I'm very sick of my own story. So it kind of allows me to experience it again in a different way, like as if somebody else wrote it, which is pretty great. Although I have to say that I get really embarrassed when I when I hear people reading it out loud. So it's like this dichotomy of like, oh, I'm getting to experience it in a different way, and then it's like, and then I always have this voice in the back of my head that is telling me that I wrote it and it's weird. So it's like these two simultaneous things happening in my head.
That's fair. That's a very authory thing, I think. And do you have any rituals? Really, I guess this is for everyone. Andrea, do you have any like writing sort of ritual that you do when you sit down and prepare to write? And do y'all have any sort of ritual that you do when you sit down and prepare to record?
I definitely have a ritual, and it is sit down and turn on a soundtrack that I like on Spotify and set forest on my phone, which is like this fun little timer and that grows trees. And if you do anything else on your phone, it kills the tree. And then I use freedom to turn off my internet. So that's my ritual. It's the only way I get things done.
That's fair. Do y'all have any like recording rituals? And if not, how many times do you read the book or the sections before you record it? Or do you not? Maybe you don't. Maybe you just read it for the first time. I assume not. But
No, we definitely read it.
It's nonfiction only. That's but no, well, in general, I usually only read it the one time before to find out the different characters and establish the voices. I might go over it again, but yeah, usually it's just the one time and then going in, because I think there's a certain amount of wanting to keep it fresh too, like maybe not too rehearsed.
Yeah, Sam, I'll do one careful prep read, and send all my notes. And it's not a relaxed read. It's like, all right, we're here to prep it. We got spreadsheets and lots of notes, laying out what I'm going to be asking in emails later. It's a working read, and then I read it again when I'm recording it. As far as rituals, it's like come in, sit down, realize I forgot my chapstick, go back out, come back in, sit down, realize I have to pee, go back out. That's my ritual.
Yeah, this is a full-time job, right? For I think definitely for those of us who are on this panel. And so it's the same kind of rituals that you do for what you're going to do to get ready for work for the day. And also when that work is at home, like the things that you need to do to set up that. So all of my rituals are around creating structure, right? Like I drank 2 pints of water within the first hour of waking up so that I'm hydrated. And every hour I drink another pint. And just how the day gets structured is I can go on. There's a lot, but yeah, that's where the whole day is a ritual. Every single moment of the workday.
I wish I was that good about drinking water throughout the day. It's
Well,
like I drink water, but I should do better with it. Like you, like, oh, I'm gonna drink 2 right here in the first
Yeah.
hour. Like they say, that's what you should do.
It's very necessary when you're doing it.
Yeah,
sure,
when you're hearing all of your own mouth noises,
Yep.
and also you won't last talking for that many
Yeah.
hours a day unless you're hydrated. Your voice is literally gonna give out on you. So yeah, you have to.
That's true.
And no phones in the booth for me anyway. It's like the only time. So there's not even a question of like, can I get distracted? If I'm in the booth, I'm recording, and if I'm not, then I'm out. Which you don't want to hang out in the booth for too long anyway, because I love it. It's a dark little closet cave, but like 4 to 6 hours a day, that's plenty. We need to like step outside and see some sunshine, you know.
That was gonna be my next question: is how long are your recording sessions? Like, do you sit there and just record all day or not? It sounds like you're doing 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, but I get up to stretch every hour. There's been several narrators who are kind of veterans who have talked about health problems that come up when you're sitting for too long. So you get up and move at least once an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, similar.
You do that when you're writing too,
6
Andrea?
hours. Yeah.
4 to 6 hours. Okay.
Oh yeah, I have to. I mean, I usually do a jog in the morning and a jog in the evening, and then do a walk at lunch. So I think that's enough.
Yes. We have a really good question from the audience. So this is from Megan, who asked the narrators, what happens when you have expectations for a character or a plot point that are completely subverted by the author? And has that happened to you in this series?
You know, I guess this is like minor spoilers. I don't know why. Maybe I should have seen it. I didn't know Jovis and Lynn were going to be interested in each other in book 2. I had no idea in book 1. So when I was prepping book 2, it just came out of nowhere. I don't know. I should have seen it coming, but I just didn't. So that surprised me. It's a good thing I didn't like make him super annoying or something. Moderately annoying.
That was just me. I think that was just my take on it. No, in general, like I just, especially when the book is good, like these are, it's just, for me, it's just a pleasure to just gotta go on this journey and whatever twists and turns might it's kind of, I'm just along for the ride.
Although I will say, and I don't think that Andrea is going to do this to us, but it has happened where an author throws in later on, particularly with the accents. They throw in an accent later on. We're like, wow, I voiced this character for 3 books without an accent, and now all of a sudden they're Scottish? Cool. Yeah.
I try to be consistent about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that where it's just never described. Oh, go ahead, Natalie.
I'm just saying that is the weirdest thing that can blindside you.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Also, sometimes romance series will have lots of spin-offs. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was talking over you. Sometimes they'll spin off. So they'll be like an annoying best friend, but then he's the sexy guy in the next book, and that gets really confusing too.
This is true with romance. Yeah, and I was just going to say that I feel like that happens a lot because authors may not describe it earlier. Like, it's like they just may not ever say or describe it, and then it matters. And so then all of a sudden they're describing it. And so then it's like, oh, wait a minute. And yeah, as a physical reader, you kind of just gloss over that kind of stuff. But as an audiobook reader, I could see how it'd be like, oh, okay, I was not reading this as that ever. And I'm also really curious for those of you who do different types of voice work, how reading an audiobook sort of differs from, like, I know y'all do video games and maybe TV and other types of of voice work. I'm curious as to how they're all different or the same.
I usually tell people that audiobooks are the marathon of voiceover. Like, it's without question the, like, physically even just the most taxing that you can do, because like you could do a commercial spot and you're in the studio for maybe like 15 minutes and it pays a ton. And the audiobooks are fun, but in terms of the amount of work versus, it's going to be the most for sure. But it also could be very fulfilling in the sense that you get to voice a lot of characters that you wouldn't ordinarily get to. And that's a lot of fun too. So.
Yeah, and related to that, or adding on to that, with it, you rarely get to do the whole cast and the stage, right? And when you're doing animation or interactive, which is video game stuff, you're playing one character, maybe a couple of fill-ins here or there, right? So it's more like theater where you get to deep dive into one or two characters. Obviously, with a book like this, where the chapters are first person, you get a little bit more of that. But they're shorter sessions, like Fio was saying, and they're generally, because there's a lot of other elements going on. You have to, I don't want to say compete with, but that are adding to the entire theater. You're only one section of it. You actually end up having to be bigger in your delivery. So it is taxing in that way, in that you have to like really dial up the crank up the dial. Mm-hmm. Whereas in audiobooks, you can kind of, like I was saying before, right, take a step back and let the audience fill in some of the colors.
I really only do audiobooks. I came from stage and singing opera, where you're sitting around forever waiting to sing your line. So, yeah.
I was going to ask you about that though, because you did sing opera, and your education is in music, and I was just wondering how music, I don't know, influences or affects your voice work.
I think that my pacing is very musically influenced for sure, and I think that spending so many years in voice lessons and coachings, asking people asking me to slightly tweak pronunciations and colors and placements has helped a lot, because I can subtly shift so many ways to give different colors and varieties of ideas and voices and stuff. So I think it's set me up really well. I think about my training all the time when I'm working, for sure.
And Andrea, I want to get back to more about this book, because I am curious about who your favorite character is to write.
People ask me this all the time, and I always say, it's like asking me to choose a favorite child. Because it's like, whichever character I'm writing at the moment is the one that I'm enjoying the most, because I feel like if I'm not enjoying writing the character or the scene, then my reader's probably not going to be enjoying reading it. It's like, put a gun to my head, tell me I have to choose. I would probably say Jovis, I think, just because he's got like a similar sense of humor to me. Like, he laughs at his own jokes. He thinks he's pretty funny, but not everybody else does. So, and then, although he's very different from me in the sense that he's like a lot grumpier than I am, but that's fun to write too.
Yeah, and I'm also curious about your world building, and if you have like a world building Bible somewhere, or if it's just all in your head, because every author is sort of different in how they do it.
So I'm one of those aspirationally organized people where I'm constantly trying to be more organized. So I always like start out with these documents in Scrivener that I'm like, oh, like this is the world, and this is their economy, and this is the stories that they tell each other and things like that. And it's very loose and it's messy. But I realized once I started writing book 2 that like wasn't going to cut it, because I was doing the thing where I'm like, what is that place's name again? Or what is that character's name again? And then I have to like try to remember the text that was around it so I could go and do like a word search in my document. And that is not the way to live. So I started like my own little like online wiki that is private to me. Nobody's ever gonna see it. Where I kind of keep track of those things. And that's been really helpful, because when I can't remember a detail or a date or things like that, I can go and look it up there. So that helps me keep consistent. The copy editor helps keep me consistent. But yeah, I wish I was like one of those people that had everything in spreadsheets. And I do, but the thing is, like, I have my wiki, but then I do this thing where I forget to add something to my wiki. So, it's like that.
Cool. I always love hearing about world building stuff, because everyone's so different and just the different ways that they do it. And it's always so interesting to hear about it. And I'm also wondering about, so going back to the audiobook narrators, we talked a little bit about prep, where, you'll read it. So I'm also wondering, like, what do you do once you get the manuscript? Like, do you print it out? Do you highlight different characters or dialogue so that you know which voice, like when to switch voices? Like, how do you sort of keep track of all of that? Whoever wants to go.
Yeah, back in the day, you used to get like a stack, like just an actual stack of like the manuscript, the whole book, kind of, I guess, copied it, like printed out. But now, yeah, they just send you the PDF, and I personally just kind of go through it on the iPad, and I have a little physical notepad. I still do that, and actually just write down the page number, like where a character first appears, and then just like the whatever the vocal notes or the character kind of notes, like the essence of that character. And yeah, that's usually what I'll refer to when I'm reading. And then you just kind of remember as you're reading along, like, oh yeah, that's the irritating guy or whatever. I think just kind of go into that.
Yeah, I also have a physical notepad in addition to making notes in the actual audio file. And yeah, I remember the days when we used to get the physical manuscript in the mail. That was crazy. And then iPads came along, right? And I know a lot of people, especially when they're first starting with narration, some of the newer narrators, they definitely, and people maybe enjoy doing that throughout, but I find it to be actually a little bit crowding when you color, like highlight each of the characters or whatnot. I think when you're really deeply in the story, it becomes, especially when it's well written, it just becomes very clear, and you know you already read it once, right? You already prepped it, so you know what scene is happening and who are the players in the scene and what their motivations are and all that stuff. So
yeah.
I used to highlight, but it's not practical anymore, especially when I deal with more simultaneous releases, because I will get a preppable manuscript and I won't get the final until I'm supposed to start recording. So it would just, there's no time to go back and highlight everything. So, and because of the way that we record, when we punch and roll, if I start a sentence with the wrong person's voice, it's very simple to go back instead of spending a whole day to go through and re-highlight everything. So.
And do you, so like if you, I don't know, make mistakes or whatever, like how often do you have to re-record? Do you like just re-listen and re-edit? Do you just sort of like stop where you are and start, or how does that, how do y'all do that?
For long form narration, usually we use something called punch and roll. So it's if we mess up, we stop, cuss, whatever, and then we go back and we punch back in where we want to start, usually like the end of the previous sentence, and it plays pre-roll. I listen to 3 seconds, or I think it's on 3 seconds, and then I keep going. So I hear the tone and what I was doing, and I match it, and then I keep going, and it goes over my mistakes. So it ends up with one take all the way through with no mistakes that I know that I made. And then an editor goes through and then finds all the mistakes that I didn't know I made. And they send me pickups and voice match files, and I record those, and then they splice them back in. So it magically seems like we made it all the way through without swallowing or anything, but we totally do.
Yeah, that's super similar. I do radio, and it is similar in radio where I read for, so we have a reading radio for the blind, a station here, and so I read for them, and we do the same thing when we're reading books for them, and then also when we're recording like radio shows. That's what they say. Like if you mess up, if it's not live, of course, if it's live radio, that's different. But if it's not live, we sort of do the same thing. For some reason, I don't know, they don't call it punch and roll. I don't know why, but yeah, that's cool. And I'm always interested in hearing about all this. And I'm also wondering, like, does your voice ever give out on you? Like how long can you read before it's just like done? Is that why you take breaks like throughout, like Emily was saying, so that doesn't happen? You just take a break, you drink water, you stretch, and then you come back.
Yeah. Well, first though, before we move on to that, what do you call it in radio?
I don't know, nothing.
They just say like, okay, we're gonna start over.
Yeah, like I don't know. They just tell me, like, when I don't know, I was just sort of trained, I guess, when I first started there, that they were like, if this happens, like if you mess up, or like on the radio, we can't say the F word. There are like things that happen. And so sometimes if you're reading a book and it's there and you're into it, you just say it, and then it's like, and so like if that happens, I have to completely stop. I have to say, I said the F word so that the editor hears it. And then I have to like wait for 5 seconds and then start. So there are things like that.
Okay. So there's an editor who comes in who is cleaning up the audio after.
Yes.
Okay. So in audiobook land, we call that a straight record. So we're engineering our own stuff. There is an editor who comes in and, like Natalie was saying, listens to proof to make sure that we didn't make any errors that we didn't catch. But we are also engineering ourselves in the booth. So we are actually stopping the actual recording and then starting over again.
Oh yeah, we do that. I do that in radio. I stop myself and say, hey, we have different things. So I guess that's not true. I don't stop the recording altogether. That's true. Somebody else, like I can like mute things from the booth, but I can't stop recording altogether. Right. And so yeah, that's why, like, you have to say, if you mess up that bad, like that's a big boo-boo that cannot air on the radio. So like if you mess up, you have to make sure that the person coming in afterwards who's editing the recording like takes that out. If it's just something else, if you just, then you just pause so that they see, when they're editing, they see like a silence in the recording, and then they know this is a mess up. So yeah, they just sort of trained us. Like they didn't really call it anything. They were just like, okay, when this happens, do this. When this happens, do this. And like the interviews that I do are, everything that I do is pre-recorded. Luckily, I don't do any live radio, or very rarely do I do live radio. And so that's always good too, because when you're doing interviews and stuff, but like sometimes, especially if you're reading like classic books, there's stuff in there that it's like, I don't want to read this sentence. And so they tell you like, it's okay. You can like skip over words or change words if you want. So it's really interesting, because when you're reading an audiobook, you read it as it is. And when you're reading for the radio, because it's going to air on the radio and lots of people are going to hear it, they're like, if you feel like this is not something, that you want to say, or that would make people uncomfortable, then you can just change it or skip it or whatever. So it's also really interesting to to do radio. And I think it's the only, it's a nonprofit radio station, reading radio for the blind. And it's one of only 3 in the whole world. So I also think it's interesting to read for them, but I can tell them like, I want to read this book. And they're like, okay, that's always fun. But I'm no like professional voice person. I just kind of go and read. Like, I like reading out loud to people. But I also find, and this is my question too for Andrea, I don't know if like when you're writing, if you read your book out loud to yourself to try and catch things that you don't catch when you're looking at it.
Sometimes I'll read a little bit to my husband. But yeah, I mean, I know that that's generally supposed to be like a good way to catch errors. Not fond of the sound of my own voice though. So it's like not a technique that I employ very often. But I mean, on long car rides, I have like been like, hey, do you want to hear this chapter? And then I'll test it out on him, and he'll tell me if there's something that he thinks I need to fix.
Cool, because I do feel like reading, there are books that like I've read physically and then I read them out loud for the radio, and then I'll listen to an audiobook. And so it's like just various different things, and I get something different every time. And sometimes it makes me like a book more, and sometimes it makes me like a book a whole lot less. So I'm also wondering for audiobook readers, has there ever, you don't have to name names or anything, but I'm just wondering if you've ever had a thing that you were like excited to read and then you read it out loud and you're like, yeah, this isn't that great. That's just a yes or no. Like I said, you don't have to say what or anything. I'm just curious if you were ever like sort of disappointed in something.
I think you can tell, like, just as you're reading it, whether it's loud or not, if it's going to be any good or not. So no, I think usually beforehand when you're going in if you think this is going to suck or not.
That's good.
I've definitely come across things that when I was reading it, with my eyeballs just quietly, I didn't understand how hard it was going to be to say out loud all the time. So, and there's some authors who write very long sentences, and sometimes they'll even be like a whole paragraph long. So it'll make perfect sense when I'm reading it at my own pace. But then when I have to weave that really big chunk and breathe in the right spot so that it all makes sense and you remember what the beginning was about, then it can be really challenging. And I have to do lots of retakes. And I know certain authors that write this way. And it's not that it's poor writing, it's that it's incredible writing. It's just hard to say out loud and to get a through line that makes sense when you hear it. So I've definitely come across that I'm like, oh, this book's awesome. Yep. And then I go to read it and I'm like, whoa, I have got to wrap my mouth around this. Okay.
Yeah, doing this for so long has changed the way that I read for pleasure. Like, I'm so in the practice of when I see the words on the page, automatically just putting them in my head, how they would come out, right? It's not even conscious. It's just, that's how I read now, that I can only read for pleasure things that I cannot fathom in my own voice. So they have to be something where I'm just like, there's not in a million years would I ever be cast for something like this. Great, let's read it for fun. Like, yeah.
That makes so much sense. And we do end up reading the same kinds of things because we get cast for our voice. And like we get different genres and stuff. But yeah, I never read some of the things that Theo is going to read. And yeah, that makes perfect sense when you say that for fun to read something totally to something I wouldn't normally be cast as.
So tell us what y'all are reading now, or if y'all have any recommendations for books, whether they're audiobooks or whatever else, physical books. Just what books do y'all like?
Are we allowed to talk about anything other than Bone Shard Daughter? I mean, come on. Bone Shard Emperor.
I want to know, Andrea, if you are planning another series yet, or are you only writing the third book?
So I am planning another series right now. I have not pitched it to my editor yet. I've pitched it to my agent. But I do have like a document that I'm trying to like put it all together in like a way that, you know, it's not a jumble in my head.
Is it
But
fantasy?
it is fantasy. So it's another epic fantasy set in a completely different world. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I don't want to say too much because I'm like, I don't know, this could all change. So,
Yeah.
but I think it's got a pretty fun magic system and interesting characters and dilemmas. So we'll see. We'll see if that all goes through.
Well, that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, I
as a
mean, I'm
reader.
like, it's part of the reason why I'm like, oh, I gotta finish like my third book so I can work on something new. It's like always the new shiny, right? In your head, you're like, yes, this is going to be wonderful. This is amazing. And then when you sit down to work on it, you're like, whoa, there's actually problems here. As for like what I'm reading or listening to, like right now, I am listening to Jade Legacy. I just started it because that just came out like 2 days ago. It's Fonda Lee's Greenbone Saga. So I actually re-listened to the first one, went straight into the second one, and then now I'm listening to the third one, and that is emotionally devastating. Wonderful. But there were like a couple of scenes. I was listening in the shower, I remember, and there were a couple of scenes where I just like kind of stared off into the distance for a while because I was like, did that just happen? Like, so I would highly recommend it. It's wonderful.
That is definitely that kind of book that like you just stare off into the middle distance after certain parts of it. And yeah, I got to talk to those audiobook narrators too a couple weeks ago, and that was really fun because those audiobooks are so good as well.
They are. I love them.
Yeah, so good. And so do y'all have any favorites that y'all like to read or listen to?
I'm recording a big book next month. I'm recording Last Exit by Max Gladstone.
Ooh,
It's
yeah.
his great American novel. It's going to be very long. It's going to be probably like about 20 hours. And I did a really meticulous prep because he is an amazing writer, but sometimes I don't always know like who's talking, even though I really try to understand. So I got like a lot of emails answered and questions answered, and I'm all set to go. So I'm really excited about that.
I just wanted to ask Andrea something. Have you been approached, or your agent been approached about any of the possibility of the rights to adapt the books into like a movie or TV series? Because when I first read it, I was like, this, I could totally like, this is a movie.
Oh my God, it's funny because that's like the question that I get from my parents all the time before was like, yeah. Are you going to go be a lawyer, right? You know, or a doctor?
And now it's like, yeah.
And now
it's like, Harry Potter?
Hey, is it going to be a movie? Right. Or when is it going to be translated to Chinese? It's like the two things. But
I put it into my mother is what I'm sorry to put that Asian guilt on you. It was unintentional.
Yeah, no, it's a whole thing. I mean, I find it entertaining mostly. But last I heard it was like out with some Hollywood people, but you know, these things are always like, who knows? Yeah. I myself am not like super optimistic because I feel like it would be pretty expensive. But yeah, we'll see. That would be great, but yeah.
Hey, lots of things get made into very expensive TV shows these days, lots of books. So, you know, there's a chance.
There's a chance.
And there's someone in the chat saying that as someone who works in the game industry, they feel like the magic system in these books would work very well in a video game. Just saying. So
oh, my husband would. love to hear that. He works on video games. That's his deal.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I do think it would make a cool video game. It is very cinematic as well. So yes, we're at our hour. So thank y'all so much for being here. This was such an interesting and cool conversation, and I'm so excited that all of you took the time to come here and talk to me and talk to each other and talk to our audience and be here. So thank y'all so much. This is amazing, and I want to tell everyone to buy books, of course. So you could go to our website, tellmecooz.com/special order, or you can just go to this event as well. We have links to the audiobook and to the regular book. You can get both from us. And you can get both audiobooks and binge through them because the second book is out now. So definitely go and do that. Thank y'all for watching, and thank y'all for coming. And this was really fun. So I really appreciate it that I get to like fanboy out with audiobook narrators and authors. This is like the best job ever. So thank y'all. And everyone buy books and have a good evening. Wow.